Situated 3 kilometres north of Williamtown, the new Campvale roundabout really seems to be in the middle of nowhere. But engineers from the Port Stephens Council estimate the roundabout carries 10,000 cars a day, servicing traffic to and from Nelson Bay, Lemon Tree Passage, the RAF Base and Raymond Terrace. With such heavy congestion, accidents have been a problem, with 35 recorded in the last 8 years. $175,000 of the $500,000 cost was paid by R&Z Mines, which in the next 5 years will be mining in areas surrounding the roundabout and will be driving heavy trucks through the intersection. About the same time as the Campvale roundabout was opened, in an ironic twist, the roundabout in Elizabeth Street, Tighes Hill was partially closed. A truck carrying 28 wool bales lost its load heading north from Hannell Street at 10:30 this morning. Police say the roundabout is difficult for heavily loaded trucks to negotiate due to the rather steep camber of the road. With the help of a forklift, the bales were removed and the traffic was back to normal within an hour.
Living off the fruit of the land may look like an idyllic lifestyle, but for Phil Smith, success in the stone fruit market has not come easy. It is not unusual to find Phil and his wife Jenny at work 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. Last Saturday they clocked up a record 24-hour shift. But it is this hard work and determination, coupled with innovative ideas, that impressed the Nuffield Scholarship judges.
It'll benefit my business enormously. We'll pick up new markets, I'm sure, where we can put our product at the right time to the right buyers, and also it'll benefit the industry in general.
In his battle against weather conditions that could see entire crops ruined, Phil has devised methods to maximise fruit growth and minimise labour, including the use of a hydrostatic mobile platform. And in a bid to increase exports, Phil has joined with 6 other family farms to form Summer Gold, a new stone fruit export company. It was a surprise 11th hour announcement by Attorney General John Dowd outside the Old Wyong Courthouse today. After inspecting the new site next to the courthouse, confirming allocation of funds for the $3.5 million building and giving an expected completion date, it was then revealed that Wyong Council is opposed to the plan. Part of the proposed Wyong Old Primary School site had been reserved for community purposes, but it appears the council wishes to have more land than is now allocated. A letter dated today from Wyong Shire Clerk to Mr Dowd states, the council is unanimous in its view that the whole site plus area behind the existing courthouse should be set aside for community use. And the council offers the choice of 2 areas of council-owned land bordering the council chambers in exchange. The letter says that the council has indicated to previous Attorney Generals that it is so keen to stop the planned development it is prepared to build the new court, possibly join to a new police station and lease it or sell it back to the government. But the matter cannot be delayed, said Mr Dowd, who declared conditions at the Old Wyong Courthouse inhuman.
Well, the staff here are working in the worst conditions I've seen in the state.
And though he says he won't delay commencement, he added if the council could prove their plan to be cheaper and quicker, then it will be back to the drawing board for another expensive set of plans.
The alarm was raised by a train passenger who noticed what looked like a body lying face down in Cockle Creek under the rail bridge. Police from Bullaroo made an initial inspection and called in the rescue police in their dinghy for a closer look. The SRA had received reports that a man aged between 50 and 60 got on a train at Cardiff early this morning, but did not get off at Fassifern as expected. A man's brown shoe on the bridge superstructure adds weight to the theory that the man fell from a moving train. The body in the creek shows serious wounds to the head. Police hope to identify the dead man tonight.
The electorate of Wallsend centres on Cardiff, extending from the northern shore of Lake Macquarie to the foothills of Mount Sugarloaf, through Minmi and north to Black Hill. Slightly more than 33,000 people are registered on the electoral roll. They'll go to the poll this Saturday to choose the late Ken Booth's successor. Taking the number one position on the ballot paper is independent Philip Laver, a 41-year-old clerical officer at State Rail's Cardiff workshops. Mr Laver is critical of both major parties in all spheres of government.
They should get out and knock door to door, realise what the people require. Some things they require are very, very small items, like a street light. Maybe they want the tab at Minmi, and Black Hill require the roads to be upgraded.
What are your major concerns?
The major concerns that the government be forced to have a referendum on a yes or no vote basis by the people of New South Wales for the reintroduction of capital punishment. I'd like to see a referendum held to abolish the upper house, a useless parliamentary body. That money could be used to fund the education cuts that are currently being made. And if you're caught DUI, I'd like to see you lose your licence in New South Wales for 5 years.
Second on the ballot paper is independent Paul Stocker, 49, unemployed and former manager of the Wangi Point Tourist Park.
Well, I'm campaigning on local issues such as the terrible drainage problems throughout the area, the need to extend the bus service out at least as far as Hawkins Village, Edgeworth, the need for us to look at regional planning priorities as a means of cutting out the sorts of land use abuses and planning aberrations that we've seen. I want to strengthen the role of the SPCC in terms of development applications. There are a great many issues, both local and regional. Because of my long-standing interest in the wool industry, I want to see the potential of the wool industry realised here. I think that there are virtually an endless number of things which interest me, but it's the alternative to the two major parties, and an effective alternative that I'm going to try and put across to the people.
Mr Stocker says the ALP has no guarantee of success on Saturday, that Mr Booth's qualities are not transferable to Labor's John Mills. In turn, the ALP candidate, a 47-year-old industrial chemist, claims electing an independent will achieve very little. He says a vote for Labor will let the government know that cuts in areas like education are not acceptable.
I really see them as an attack on our kids' future, and quite frankly, when I've been around door knocking, it's about the major issue that people volunteer as their own concern. Increases in charges, particularly, are going to hurt pensioners. The electricity and water and gas and so on charges have increased since Mr Greiner came in. The pensioners' free intra-state rail trips that used to be 2 a year are no longer free, and of course there have been public transport increases, and in some good cases in this electorate, for example the crossroads into town, there was a 100% increase in transport charges last year.
So you're in fourth position on the ballot paper is Lindsay Bradley, a 48-year-old retail manager who is running as an independent. Mr Bradley says he's prepared to take on both major parties to ensure a fair go for the region.
If I've got to go and have a cup of tea with Mr Greiner, I certainly will. If I've got to have a cup of tea with Mr Carr to get things done for the whole area, I certainly will. My job is put there by the people to serve the people. I will do that and get things in this area that never had before and neglected. I say, look at Wallsend Hospital. Look at the outpatients, a temporary building since 1980. That's shameful. Before people vote, go and have a look at that. Go and have a look at our road systems and say to yourself, look at Darling Harbour. Isn't it darling down there? We haven't got much to be darling about in these areas, the roads, the hospitals and so on. I rest my case.
As part of the Smith family toy appeal, Santa and his workers have been travelling the streets of Newcastle, collecting and giving out Christmas cheer. Hard at work in the Hunter Street Mall, Santa received a few more presents for the appeal. With $58,000 in gifts and cash already raised, the Smith family hopes to gather $100,000 all up to help the children of the Hunter. And if the reaction of the youngsters in the mall is any gauge, this Santa's work is a very worthy and much appreciated cause.
Newcastle's banana merchants are a good bunch. They have donated $10,000 towards a much-needed twin-engine chopper for the Hunter Helicopter Rescue Service. And handing over the money was Benny Banana, who did find it rather hard to peel himself away from the cash.
And take it.
The Helicopter Appeal Fund began last September and nearly $150,000 has been raised so far. The target is $1 million. And there's a promise of more money in store from the members of the fruit and vegetable industry, who aim to raise another $10,000 early next year. And this afternoon, Leo Lewis of the Lions Club Toronto presented a cheque to Sister Marie Perpetua for the Mater Hospital's Villa units. The money is reimbursement for the furnishing of this unit, one of 16 in the Villa complex. And the donation represents the Lions fundraising during their 30th anniversary year.
They could bring in.
From his rooms in the English department at the university, Professor John Burrows is slowly churning out one of the most comprehensive studies into literature. He's called it the computisation of the English language, an impressive name for a suitably impressive project. After years of studies, it's slowly drawing the interest of experts worldwide, having built itself from a very peculiar fascination of the professors. Emma, probably one of the finest works to come from the pen of the great Jane Austen. I'm sure many of us have read it and enjoyed it, but I wonder if you noticed just how many times the word elegant was used. It was actually used at one stage 6 times on one page, and it was that little irregularity that first launched Professor Burrows' studies. Though it is complicated, the project simply studies the way the world's leading authors have used the English language over the last 3 centuries. Dating back to those early chapters from the pen of Austen, Professor Burrows now has 37 authors on his lists, and all of them continue to produce the same startling patterns. With the use of computers and statistics and hours of reading, the professor and his researchers have examined the text of those authors to determine their most commonly used words. Those are then compared with the lists from other authors to find the similarities and more commonly the differences between the centuries, the nationalities and even the sexes, where Professor Burrows says the straight-laced society of yesteryear certainly reflected in the author's texts.
But you get that difference, the boys going off to school and getting one kind of education, the girls staying at home and getting quite another. And in this century, the split grows much, much less, as boys and girls are educated together. And it's no longer there. The 20th century writers on our pattern tend to be very comparatively inseparable in terms of male-female. So I think it's not about biology, but about education.
But while Jane Austen's favourite word may have been elegant, it seems the most common words to the authors are the most common to most folk, and always have been.
We'll go down the list. The, and, he, a, of, his, was. We all use all of them all the time. The extraordinary thing is that there are consistent differences in where they stand for you or me or the other chap.
Certainly it sounds fascinating, but the real question, with the program last year receiving $40,000 in government funding, is just how practical it really is. Very, says Professor Burrows, not only in satisfying the inquisitive minds of the literary buffs, but also in stamping out the common problem of forgery.
We're getting pretty hot on forgery, and there's a useful practical application for the future, tracing the true authorship of forged documents.
Playing first were Wally Masseur and Karl-Uwe Stieb of West Germany. It was expected to be a close match, and that's how it began. It wasn't until the 9th game that serve was broken by Stieb. He served out to win the first set, 6-4. The second set was all Masseur. With superior net play, he broke twice to race to a 4-love lead. Stieb did break back once, but it wasn't enough to stop Masseur taking the second set comfortably, 6-3. However, it would be the 21-year-old West German who would get the extra break in the third set to play his way into tomorrow's final against Ivan Wendell. The women's match was all Anne Minter. The top-ranked Australian was too good for 19-year-old Nicole Provis. Minter raced away in the first set, winning 5 straight games, before a lapse in concentration saw the teenager Provis come back to 5-4. However, Minter, the world number 24, won the next game to seal the first set, 6-4. The second set went like the first, with Minter taking the match, 6-4, 6-3.
For instance, it costs only half as much to run a government bus in Newcastle as it does in Sydney. Yet timetables and rostering in the two cities are based on the same criteria. This is the main reason that the Newcastle manager of urban transit, Len Regan, is pushing for autonomy for the operation here. It would be run as a small government-owned corporation, enabling the unique characteristics of this area to be taken into account, which would lead to efficiencies.
Currently the fares are set by the government and they're the same in Sydney as they are in Newcastle. But it only costs half as much to run a bus in Newcastle as it does in Sydney, because we don't have congestion like harbour bridges and major CBDs and that sort of thing. So our operations here in Newcastle cost a lot less per kilometre than they do in Sydney. So therefore we should be able to reflect that in the fare structures and efficiency that we achieve here.
Well, are you saying that we're actually subsidising Sydney?
Well, we don't get as many passengers on our buses as they do in Sydney, so it cuts both ways.
Is it not possible, though, that under an autonomous system, people here might have to pay higher fares than in Sydney?
What we've got to do is have a look at our efficiency to reduce our expenses and increase our revenue. And I believe that the major way to increase revenue is to increase passengers on the buses. I'm not talking at this stage, I don't think Urban Transit is talking about increasing fares.
In this area.
Kinzer found himself out of the race after crashing head-on into the concrete wall and demolishing his car. In the 10-lap sprint race, Australian champion George Tatnall set a new record of 2 minutes 15.699 seconds, eclipsing the former record held by his son Brooke. However, the glory was short-lived. In the NBN International Masters over 25 laps, Tatnall was involved in a 4-car pile-up with American Ron Schumann, Brad Haywood and son Brooke. Schumann and young Tatnall were able to restart. Unfortunately for the other two, they were out of the race. Former Victorian Max Dumsney was too consistent in the event to win from Schumann and the teenage Tatnall.
Max Dumsney in car 95 is first. Second